I got sick of sitting on my bed, scratching hair off myself, so I headed to David's to have a little fun before I got put on punishment. As soon as I got out in the fresh air, my whole body felt stale. My armpits were wet, and it seemed like hairs were crawling across my neck. I was still wound up, and the gravel I threw at David's window made a cracking sound like thunder when the lightning's close. David's face appeared, lips curled, and he threw a thumb over his shoulder, then disappeared. It's funny when he gets worked up and moves fast. It happens a lot. We met on the concrete porch, and David started in as the door swung open. "Man, don't be breaking. But your buzzer busted, and you ain't heard when I knock 'cause you got the TV going. Ah, come on up." He turned back up the staircase, holding the banister and swiveling his hips to reach each stair, ass wagging like a toddler. I caught up and punched him in the rear for giving me lip. A dork like David should be glad I was coming by. David hopped with the punch. "Don't play, man." His voice hadn't changed. Even Laura's was deeper than his. "Don't snap my undies." We both laughed at the Simpsons joke. "You got a tape of last week's show, D?" "Yeah, we watched it on Thursday, Kevin." "Let's watch it again." The Gundersons' living room always smells like cigarettes and baby powder, and in the afternoon, the sun shows the worn spots on the leather couch in the middle of the floor. Keyboard music was playing on the jumbo TV, where a guy with a jerry curl and tight jeans ran through a rainy alley, holding a gun. We sat on the couch, and I dug my shoulders into the cushion. I could feel hairs drying under my shirt. David squinted at me and asked, "Why you got hair on you?" "'Cause I got a haircut." "You didn't shower?" "No." I arched my back to lift my butt off the couch cushion. "Don't get that on my mama's couch." He lunged at me with his arms out and shoved me against the couch arm. When I pushed him back, my finger poked into his mouth and touched his slimy teeth. "Dang, watch your nasty mouth." I pushed him off and he rolled to the floor. Oof, jumping on me like a faggot. David hopped back onto his side of the couch and said, "Well, if I'm a faggot, then you a faggot for wanting to hang out with me." "See, you just admitted that you're gay." Being gay is the worst thing possible. Being gay is fighting bad, sucking at sports, not getting girls, wearing hand-me-downs from forever ago, doing good in class, and looking at other dudes in the locker room. I won't lie, except for doing good in class, I've done all those things. They're easy for a guy to do, but only the gay ones really let it happen. David waved his left hand. "Careful with this couch. You know how she is about her couch. She's gonna kill me." "She won't notice. I'll sit still." I wanted to stay there forever and not get put on punishment, but I wished I'd showered. The loose hair felt like it was growing roots in my body, and my feet were clammy in yesterday's socks. The man on TV got shot, and he grimaced with his hand over his arm, blood dripping between his fingers before it went to a commercial. I imagined Mama at home, turning in a circle in the hall upstairs, looking for me in each room so she could ground me. Nothing happened at home but Mama on my ass and Laura leaving to kick it with her high school friends. Not much happened at David's place either, but at least I was doing my own thing. I looked around the room, wishing fun would just appear. "Can I get some soda?" David always had a couple 2-liters in the fridge. Cable and soda. David had it made. "We out of soda." David narrowed his eyes. "Some water?" Okay, but you gotta wash the glass." I walked into the kitchen with David, who scooted around to my left with his hands out like a basketball guard, blocking me from the cookie cabinet. David dropped some ice into a plastic radio station cup and filled it from the sink. When the sink stopped, a thin, zipping sound started coming through the window from the alley a floor down. I knew that noise, but it was out of place. David held onto the cup and we stepped over to the wide-open window. All 300 pounds of Tyrell stood right under us, with wadded-up tissue in his nose and a baggy green t-shirt pulled up on top of his belly. He was pissing on the garbage cans, going hard so the urine roared like drums. Next I knew, David had stuck his arm out the window and poured the water. Tyrell looked up as the water fell, the puddle growing wider in the air. Even from above, he was huge. You could probably see him from space, like the Great Wall of China. A piece of ice zeroed in on his face. He opened his mouth, and the ice cube bounced off his forehead, then the slap of water, which made the tissue in his nose a dead flower. Me and David started laughing so hard I thought we'd bounce out the window next. The cube skidded to a stop in the gravel, and Tyrell wheeled back, blinking and yelling, "Ow!" then taking his hand off his still-pissing privates. He bent down to get his balance, saw the stream of whiz darkening his jeans, and howled like a hound. I slapped David on the back. Maybe he wasn't so sorry after all. Tyrell's shirt fell over his belly. He looked up at me, and the laughing caught in my throat. Tyrell shook his head, drops of water whipping off of his jowls, and he pointed up at the window, yelling, "I oughta fuck you up, and I'm gonna fuck you up next I see you out the house." David was still laughing and thumping the windowsill with his fist. Tyrell blew the wet tissue out of his nose, and I realized I wouldn't always be safe in David's apartment. Maybe being grounded wouldn't be so bad after all. David was pointing into the alley with the empty cup in one hand and clapping my back with the other, hitting a fresh zit that had appeared that morning. Tyrell used his shirt to wipe water from his eyes, and David made a boo-hoo noise and laughed harder, bopping on the balls of his feet. I pulled him away from the window right as gravel clattered off the shingles and glass, following Tyrell's cursing, "Bitch-ass motherfucker," through the window. I remembered how I felt two textbooks clapping into each other inside Tyrell's book bag when he smacked me with it, and worried about what a real ass whooping would feel like. Then I looked at David, who had sat down at the kitchen table and was still smiling like crazy with that cup in his hand, and I just got mad that Tyrell the bully was throwing rocks into my best friend's apartment. We couldn't even chill inside without Tyrell trying to play us. I grabbed the cup, crouched low, and charged across the floor like a soldier in a war movie. Curse words rained in. "Faggot-ass bitch!" David was getting weak laughing at me squatting on the floor, trying to reach the faucet while Tyrell's shouts got hoarse and started sounding less and less like words and more like, "Arr, gobber, gobber, gobber." By the time I got more water in the cup and crept back up on the window, the yelling had stopped, and Tyrell was gone. Probably to his apartment a block over, but it looked like he had melted, because there was a dark puddle where he had been standing. A breeze blew a bit of dead grass in the middle of the alley, and an ice cube slid off a garbage can into the dirt. Things were peaceful for the time being. I looked at the water, tipping back and forth in the cup, and remembered that I hadn't put anything in my stomach since before my haircut, hours ago. But the water reminded me of the wet tissue in Tyrell's nose, and how I'd have to duck him for at least a week, and I couldn't drink. I poured it out onto the garbage can, and it washed away the piss stain. We were a few minutes into the Simpsons tape when David turned to me and said, "Yo, Kevin," then shook his head around all crazy going, "Arr, gobba, gobba, gobba." We both laughed and didn't shit else matter for the time being.